The emergency alarm screamed through the Grand Council chamber like something dying. Ambassador Threxel of the Proximan Collective felt all three of his stomachs tighten at once. Perfect, he muttered under his breath. Another peaceful, diplomatic gathering. Around him, representatives from 43 star systems were already shouting over one another. Wings flared, feathers ruffled, scales bristled. Holographic screens flickered with frantic messages. The center of the chaos, stood supreme Chancellor Voss's Prime of the Luminari, 7 feet of glowing crystal and controlled fury. Order, she thundered. Her voice vibrated through the chamber's vaulted ceiling, designed specifically to make council authority sound divine. And O1 listened. They never did. Threxel adjusted the ceremonial sash across his shoulder and sighed. He had served on this council for 20 cycles. 20 long cycles of trade disputes, border skirmishes, mineral rights arguments, and polite threats disguised as negotiations. But today felt different, because today a human was coming. The Terran delegation will arrive within the hour, announced Ambassador Felamoth of the Serpentine Collective, her forked tongue tasting the air in amusement, but a wave of uneasy murmurs spread through the chamber. Several representatives instinctively checked their personal shield generators. Typical, the humans had. Only joined interstellar politics 300 cycles ago. Young, loud, unpredictable, dangerous. They have requested this audience to protest the sanctions placed on their colony, New Terra, Voss's Prime said coldly. As though they have any right to protest anything. Her luminescent body brightened with irritation. Threxel suppressed a grimace. The sanctions have been harsh. Hyperlane access restricted. Trade routes frozen. Financial assets locked. Supply inspections delayed. Officially, it was about a human mining crew that had allegedly assaulted a Luminari overseer. Unofficially, it smelled like corporate greed. The Luminari wanted New Terra's mineral rights, and the council had helped apply pressure. The human representative is Captain Vex Holloway, Felamoth continued, clearly enjoying herself. Former military officer, decorated veteran, no diplomatic experience. A soldier, sent into a political battlefield. Threxel leaned back slightly. This was going to be interesting. She will accept our terms, Voss's Prime declared, or face the consequences. The chamber doors opened with a slow pneumatic hiss, and a human walked in. Captain Vex Holloway did not rush. She did not hesitate. She simply entered as if she belonged there, tall by human standards. Dark skin, close-cropped hair marked with faint scars. No myths, no visible weapons, just a simple black uniform. Her expression said she had better things to do. Point two other humans followed her. Point one thin and nervous, likely an aide. The other built like reinforced cargo plating. Security. They looked unimpressed by the towering architecture meant to intimidate visitors. Threxel almost admired that. The speaking platform for visitors sat 12 feet below the council seats. Symbolism mattered here. Visitors looked up. Council members looked down. Holloway stepped onto the lower platform. She did not look up. Supreme Chancellor, she said calmly. Thank you for meeting with us. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber without strain. Confident, controlled, Voss's Prime folded her wings tightly behind her back. Captain Holloway, your colony harbors criminals. Before we discuss sanctions, you will surrender the mining crew responsible for assaulting a Luminari official. Holloway's face did not change. You mean the crew who defended themselves when your overseer attempted to confiscate their equipment without compensation? The chamber went still. In O1 corrected Voss's Prime publicly. In O1 the Chancellor's glow intensified. That is a misrepresentation of events. We have recordings, Holloway replied evenly. Would you like to review them? Whispers exploded across the chamber. Threxel felt something shift in the air. This was not how small colonies behaved. Felamoth leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Captain, perhaps you misunderstand your position. New Terra depends on hyperlane access, medical shipments, food supplies, infrastructure components. Without council cooperation, survival becomes difficult. A pause, cold, calculated, surrender the crew, pay reparations, accept permanent oversight. Another pause, or watch your colonists suffer. The human aide beside Holloway visibly paled. The security officer's jaw tightened. Holloway smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. That's quite the ultimatum, she said lightly. Very dramatic. I especially liked the pause. A short, sharp laugh escaped Threxel before he could stop himself. Several heads turned toward him. Voss's Prime's voice dropped to something dangerous. Captain, you will show respect. Holloway's smile vanished instantly. With all due respect, she said calmly. Which is to say none. I didn't travel 3 weeks through hyperspace to be threatened by what amounts to a glorified trade cartel. Silence. Absolute silence. Even Felamoth stopped moving. Threxel felt a chill crawl up his spine. The human wasn't defending her colony. She was challenging the entire system. And she wasn't done. I've reviewed council regulations, Holloway continued. Section 47. Subsection 12 of the Galactic Commerce Code prohibits trade sanctions being used as leverage in criminal proceedings. Article 9 of the Colonial Rights Charter guarantees recognize colonies' legal autonomy unless proven inadequate by independent audit. Council members began checking their datapads. Rapidly, uncomfortably, Voss's Prime stiffened. Regulations are subject to council interpretation. Holloway tilted her head slightly. Interpretation works both ways. A quiet ripple of tension moved through the chamber. Threxel suddenly realized something important. This human hadn't come to beg. She had come prepared. Very prepared. And the council, for the first time in decades, wasn't in control of the conversation anymore. Holloway slowly pulled out her datapad. And since we're discussing interpretations, she said softly, perhaps we should talk about financial interests. Voss's Prime's glow flickered. What exactly are you implying, Captain? Holloway tapped her device. Oh, she replied. I'm not implying anything. And Threxel felt it in his bones. The real meeting had just begun. The chamber held its breath. 43 star systems. Thousands of years of political tradition. And one human with a datapad. Holloway's eyes swept across the council seats. You're not as untouchable as you think, she said quietly. Voss's Prime straightened. Choose your next words carefully, Captain. Holloway tapped her pad again. The main display screens flickered to life. Financial records appeared. Transaction trails, shell corporations, transfer chains looping through private accounts. Names, recognizable names. Threxel felt one of his stomachs twist. He recognized at least 6 council members on that screen. Large payments from luminary mining conglomerates. Contracts approved shortly after. Trade rulings conveniently adjusted. The silence turned heavy. Felamoth's tongue flicked nervously. Those records could be fabricated. They aren't, Holloway replied. And you know they aren't. Voss's Prime's glow brightened sharply. This is an outrageous accusation. It's documentation. Holloway's tone never changed. Supreme Chancellor, you personally hold majority interests in 17 companies positioned to benefit from council oversight of New Terra's mineral rights. A ripple of shock spread across the chamber. Even species without visible expressions reacted. That is private commercial information, Voss's Prime snapped. Not when it influences public policy. Threxel stared at the human captain. This wasn't reckless. This was surgical, precise, planned. You overstep, Quillax said weakly from his seat. Holloway looked up at him. Do I? She pressed something on her pad, and the lights went out. All of them. The chamber dropped into complete darkness. In glow panels, in holograms, and emergency strips. Nothing. Gasps echoed. Metal scraped as someone stumbled into furniture. Panicked voices rose. Threxel species had excellent low-light vision. He could see. Holloway stood perfectly still in the center of the chamber. Her security officer had shifted positions smoothly, covering her back. The aide looked like he might faint. 10 seconds passed. Then the lights returned. Every system rebooted at once. Displays blinked back online. Environmental hum resumed. Emergency protocols should have triggered immediately. They hadn't. Voss's Prime remained seated. Her crystalline hands gripped the podium hard enough to fracture it. What, she whispered, did you do? Holloway slipped her data pad behind her back. Nothing permanent. Her expression was calm. Almost polite. Just a demonstration. Felamoth stared. You hacked the council complex. Not personally, Holloway said. I'm a soldier. I have friends who specialize in other things. She glanced upward at the towering ceiling. Life support, shields, communications, waste management, all running on the same galactic standard architecture. Her eyes lowered slowly. Very impressive system. Quillax's feathers began to shed visibly. This is an act of war. Holloway shrugged. You threatened to starve my colony. I turned off your lights for 10 seconds. She tilted her head. Seems proportional. The chamber felt smaller suddenly, more fragile that Voss's prime rose slowly to her full height. You think this will intimidate us? No, Holloway's answer was immediate. I think it will educate you. The human stepped forward slightly. You believe humanity was young, crude, disorganized. She gestured lightly toward the restored systems. We are creative. Her gaze hardened. And we are very good at breaking things people claim can't be broken. Threxel felt the shift happened. That IT wasn't loud, that IT wasn't dramatic. But it was undeniable. The council was no longer negotiating from strength. They were calculating risk. Military retaliation? Possible, but dangerous. That if humans could reach into the heart of the council complex, what else could they reach? What exactly do you want? Voss's prime asked finally. Her voice had lost its thunder. Holloway didn't smile this time. You lift the sanctions. Immediately. You acknowledge that the New Terra incident is a criminal matter, not political leverage. You establish an independent investigation into commercial corruption within this council. The word corruption echoed like a strike. And if we refuse? Felamoth hissed that Holloway's fingers rested lightly on her data pad. Then my ship transmits everything we've collected. She let that settle. Every transaction, every bribe, every conflict of interest. Her eyes moved slowly across the chamber. I have enough to bury a small moon. Threxel believed her. The scariest part? She wasn't shouting. She wasn't angry. She was calm. That meant this had been considered, prepared, measured. You would cause galactic instability, Quillax whispered. Holloway met his gaze. You caused it first. Silence again. Deep. Heavy. Calculations moved behind dozens of alien eyes. Finally, Voss's prime spoke. The council will recess for deliberation. 2 hours. Holloway replied instantly. Medical shipments are waiting. The chancellor's glow flickered violently. 2 hours. The gavel struck. Council members rushed into private chambers, whispers. Panic. Emergency calls. Threxel remained seated for a long moment. He had witnessed power struggles before. This was different. This wasn't about fleets or weapons. This was about information. Infrastructure. Control. Holloway turned to leave. Threxel stood abruptly and followed her into the corridor. Captain. She stopped, turned slowly. Her eyes were sharp. Yes, Ambassador? That, Threxel said carefully, was either the bravest or most reckless thing I have seen in 20 cycles. Holloway's lips curved faintly. Why not both? He lowered his voice. Voss's prime will never forgive this. I'm counting on it. Threxel blinked. You want her angry? I want her distracted, Holloway replied. She stepped closer. You and several others are tired of Luminari dominance. Threxel felt his stomachs tighten again. That is a dangerous accusation. It's an opportunity. Her voice softened slightly. The council could be something better. And if it collapses, he asked quietly, then we build something new. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, Ambassador? Yes. The light's going out today. She smiled. That was the polite warning. Threxel watched her walk away, and for the first time in 20 cycles, he felt something close to hope or fear, possibly both. The 2 hours passed like waiting for a star to explode. Inside the Grand Council complex, private chambers buzzed with panic, encrypted calls, emergency audits, frantic legal consultations. Several representatives were quietly checking their personal accounts. Others were reviewing past votes. Some were simply trying to calculate how much of their careers might survive public exposure. Ambassador Threxel watched it all with careful interest. For the first time in 20 cycles, the Luminari were not dictating the pace of events. They were reacting. Exactly 2 standard hours later, The chamber doors reopened. Every seat was filled, and no one wanted to miss what happened next. Voss's Prime stood at her podium. Her glow was dimmer now. Controlled. Measured. Captain Vex Holloway entered with the same steady stride. Same calm expression. Same black uniform, but if she felt pressure, she didn't show it. Captain Holloway. Voss's Prime began, her voice tight. The council has reached a decision. Holloway folded her hands behind her back. I'm listening. A pause. The entire chamber leaned forward. The sanctions on New Terra will be suspended immediately, pending an independent review of the incident involving the Luminari Overseer. A ripple of murmurs. An arbitration panel. Voss's Prime continued. Jointly selected by the Council and the Terran Federation, will determine whether criminal charges are warranted. Holloway gave a small nod. Acceptable. Voss's Prime's wings tightened slightly. The Council will also establish an ethics review committee to examine potential conflicts of interest related to commercial influence. There was the compromise: controlled, limited, contained, with limited investigative authority, she added quickly. The committee will review official Council records and provide internal recommendations. Holloway's expression did not change. Internal. Yes. No access to private commercial transactions? That would violate. So you are investigating yourselves? Holloway interrupted calmly that a few council members shifted uncomfortably. Quillax cleared his throat. This is a significant concession. The council has never permitted internal review before. Holloway nodded slowly. That's true. She stepped forward slightly. But you're still protecting the root problem. Silence tightened again. I want full authority, Holloway said clearly. Subpoena power. Access to commercial records tied to council decisions. Public reporting of findings. Shouting erupted instantly. Outrage. Accusations. Threats. Threxel noticed something interesting. Not everyone was angry. Some were listening. Through the chaos, Holloway stood perfectly still, waiting that Voss's Prime slammed her crystalline hand against the podium. Order. Gradually, the noise faded. You are asking this council to dismantle long-standing privacy protections. I'm asking you to prove you aren't corrupt, Holloway replied. You insult, I document, Holloway corrected. She lifted her data pad. Every display screen in the chamber activated simultaneously. Financial transfers, hidden ownership structures, kickbacks routed through shell corporations, council member names highlighted. Large numbers. The silence this time was absolute. These files, Holloway said quietly, are stored in a secured Terran intelligence server. She looked directly at Voss's Prime. If anything happens to me, if I fail to check in every 12 hours, they are released automatically. A long pause to every news network in council space. The words hung like gravity. Threxel understood what had just happened. This was no longer negotiation. This was leverage at scale. Blackmail, Felamoth hissed. Leverage, Holloway corrected again. Blackmail implies wrongdoing. She gestured to the screens. I didn't create these transactions. Voss's Prime leaned forward. And once you get what you want, Captain, what prevents humanity from demanding more? Holloway met her gaze evenly. Nothing. A ripple of shock. Welcome to accountability, she continued. The rest of us have lived under your unchecked authority for centuries. Consider this balance. Quillax's voice trembled. You would risk destabilizing the entire galactic order? Holloway answered without hesitation. Yes. The word struck like impact. Because the current order is already unstable, she continued. It just hides it better. She scanned the chamber slowly. How many of you joined the council voluntarily? No one answered. How many were told membership was required for hyperlane access? For trade recognition? For economic survival? Several representatives avoided eye contact. Threxel felt one of his stomachs tighten again. His own people had faced that exact choice decades ago. Join or be isolated. The council could be something better, Holloway said. Her tone shifted slightly. Less sharp. More sincere. A true partnership between species. But empires don't reform themselves, she finished quietly. They either change or collapse. Voss's Prime's glow flickered unevenly. If we refuse? Holloway lowered her pad slightly. Then the files go public. Riots, impeachments, criminal investigations, trade collapse. She shrugged once. You'll be too busy surviving to worry about reform. The chamber felt like it was holding its breath. Voss's Prime closed her eyes briefly. Calculating if the files were released, public outrage would spread across dozens of worlds. Political rivals would seize advantage. Confidence in the council would fracture overnight, and humanity had already proven they could reach critical infrastructure. War wasn't the real threat. Exposure was. Finally, Voss's Prime spoke. The council will recess for one final deliberation. 1 hour, Holloway replied. No extensions. The gavel struck. Representatives rushed away again. This time faster, more urgent. Threxel remained seated, staring at the human captain. You are forcing a revolution, he said quietly once the chamber emptied. Holloway glanced at him. No, she looked back at the now blank screens. I'm forcing a choice. He hesitated. And if they choose ruin? Her expression hardened slightly. Then at least the galaxy will know the truth. She checked the time. Ticking, Ambassador. And for the first time in his long career, Threxel realized the council's future was no longer in luminary hands. It was in the hands of a human who had decided enough was enough. The hour expired. The chamber doors reopened. This time, no one spoke. And oh whispers, and oh outrage, and oh side conversations. Only tension. Voss's Prime returned to her podium. Her glow was stable again. Not confident, not dominant, resolved. Captain Vex Holloway stood exactly where she had been before, still, patient, waiting. The council has completed its final deliberation, Voss's Prime said. Her voice carried weight. By majority emergency authority. A pause long enough to feel intentional. We will authorize the formation of an independent oversight authority. A wave of controlled reaction moved through the chamber. Not applause, not outrage. Shocked. Voss's Prime continued. The authority will possess subpoena power. Another ripple. Full access to commercial transaction records tied to council decision-making. Quillax lowered his head. Findings will be publicly released across all member systems. Absolute silence followed. Threxel felt history bending. Voss's Prime turned directly toward Holloway. The Terran Federation will hold one of 3 permanent leadership seats within the authority. There was power formally shared. For balance, she added tightly. Holloway inclined her head slightly. Acceptable. Voss's Prime did not look pleased, but she continued. Sanctions on New Terra are hereby lifted effective immediately. The Luminary Overseer will return to council space pending arbitration. No applause followed because everyone understood what this meant. The Luminary had just agreed to oversight. Public oversight. They had conceded leverage, and they had done it because a human forced the calculation. Voss's Prime's voice lowered. This decision was not made lightly. Holloway answered calmly. It rarely is. A council member from the Outer Rim rose abruptly. This sets a dangerous precedent. Holloway turned toward him. Yes. She didn't deny it. For the first time, she continued, power answers to transparency. She scanned the chamber. If that feels dangerous, perhaps examine why. The representative sat back down. Voss's Prime studied Holloway carefully. You understand this changes the structure of the galactic order. Yes. And if corruption is not as widespread as you imply, then you will be cleared publicly, Holloway replied, and legitimacy will increase. A long pause. Voss's Prime's wings shifted slowly. You came prepared for war. No, Holloway said quietly. I came prepared for accountability. The difference hung in the air. Threxel rose slowly from his seat. He rarely spoke without calculation. Today was different. The Varelian Combine, he said clearly, supports this reform. Murmurs followed. Another delegate stood. The MYRR Dominion concurs. Then another point one by one. Not because they trusted humanity, but because they had lived under quiet pressure for too long. And now someone had broken the ceiling. Voss's Prime saw the momentum forming. This was no longer a human victory. IT was a structural shift. She straightened. Then let it be recorded. She struck the gavel. The era of unchecked council authority is concluded. The sound echoed harder than usual. Captain Holloway stepped forward one final time. For clarity, she said calmly, the Terran Federation will transmit encryption keys verifying the security of the documented files. A subtle message. The leverage would remain safely contained, but no longer active. We prefer cooperation, she added, but we are prepared for exposure. Voss's Prime held her gaze. Humanity is more dangerous than we assessed. Holloway allowed the faintest hint of a smile. You mistook patience for weakness. A thin, almost invisible reaction rippled through several delegates. Respect, fear, recalibration. The meeting adjourned. Representatives departed in thoughtful silence, and shouting, and accusations. Only awareness. The balance had shifted. Threxel approached Holloway one final time. You did not simply defend your colony, he observed. No, you reshaped the council. Holloway looked toward the towering ceiling of the chamber. We didn't reshape it. She paused. We reminded it who it serves. Outside, across dozens of star systems, emergency signals were already spreading. Sanctions lifted, oversight established, files sealed, markets adjusting, news networks preparing headlines. The galaxy had not exploded, IT had corrected, slowly, deliberately, because one human refused to blink, and for the first time in centuries, the Luminari were no longer untouchable.